Hot Dogs is an adorable Doris Day Show episode. I'll be honest, when I saw the title for this, I didn't think it would be about actual dogs. I was delighted when I realised that that would be the case. This is the 15th episode of the second season, directed by Coby Ruskin, and while it is absolutely adorable, I will say I did miss Buck, Billy, and Toby. They don't appear in this at all. That does happen occasionally, and I wish they'd been in it, but at the same time, it wasn't really relevant for the narrative. It starts off with Doris and Myrna coming across this car in a car park, and it's got a sign on the top that says Poodle Parlor, and they realise inside that there are quite a few dogs. I didn't count them, but we're talking a good half a dozen poodles. And the windows are up. And actually, I was watching it, and when they were looking at the poodles, they hadn't mentioned the windows. And I was thinking, this is showing dogs in a car with the windows up. What's going on? And then Doris pointed out, and I was relieved that that's actually the message in the episode, because, I mean, this was obviously in the beginning of the 70s. I don't know exactly how well known it was. Certainly nowadays there are campaigns to stop people leaving dogs in cars with the windows up. I don't know if it was as commonly known in the 70s that you shouldn't do that. But either way, giving that message and saying you should not leave dogs alone in a car with the windows up, particularly on a hot day, is a really great thing. And they managed to get the dogs out of the car and take it back to the office, take all of the dogs back to the office, and they think it'll be okay because Mr. Nicholson's at an appointment. Mr. Harvey greeted the dogs in such a wonderful way. I loved how he responded. I was a little bit concerned that he was going to be not very happy with the situation, but actually I loved how he responded to it. Unfortunately, Mr. Nicholson has to come back and conduct his interview in his office. Doris can't let him know about the dogs. I won't say what happens or how the rest of the narrative develops, but it was adorable. It was such a fun narrative and very unpredictable. And just watching Doris interacting with these dogs, it's no secret that Doris loved animals, and she had several dogs of her own. Well, I don't know how many dogs she had, but certainly there were a couple that we know she really loved. And just watching her interacting with these dogs and holding Poo Poo, this adorable little poodle. I'm not a big fan of poodles in general. I don't dislike them, but they're not my breed of choice. But little Poo Poo was the cutest thing ever. And just watching Doris talking to the dogs and holding them, and the scene where, it's not really a spoiler, but the scene where Myrna and Doris quickly cart the dogs out of the room, and she's pushing them forward, but gently and lovingly. And it's just, if you're a Doris Day fan and you love that she loved animals, you will adore that part of this episode. It is unpredictable, it's a fun narrative, and the fact that the entire thing is saying don't leave your dogs in a car with the windows down, particularly when it's hot, is brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. The scene, well, okay, spoilers from now. The last thing I have to say is a spoiler for something that happens with the narrative. Everything else is brilliant. As I said, I missed Buck, Toby, and Billy, but it did work without them. So spoiler from now, the scene in the courtroom I hadn't expected, and I genuinely didn't know what was going to happen when the car owner found out his dogs were missing. And it makes sense that it would go to court because technically Doris did break the law. I think today in the UK, I could be wrong. Okay, I googled it, and quite shockingly, it is a criminal offence, or still could be classed as a criminal offence if you break a car window if there's a dog in there and it's hot, which I think is pretty disgusting because you're doing something to save the life of another. Maybe the law doesn't consider dogs to be as important as people. Wouldn't surprise me. Either way, the point is, it doesn't surprise me that it went to court in this episode. It made a lot of sense. I thought those scenes were handled really brilliantly. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. A brilliant episode from start to finish. And despite the absence of Buck, Toby, and Billy, I think it could be a new one of my personal favourites.